Welcome to this brief introduction to the SenseAdapt project forecasting tool based on a Monte Carlo modeling approach. We use the data that your team has created in the tool that it uses, probably TFS or possibly Jira, and we run that through a model that we create in order to predict the likely delivery dates of a project. It's a more accurate and clearly more objective way of deciding when a project is going to finish. We're using an approach which is easily validatable. We can take your own data from a project that you know that may have finished recently, run it through the project and show you that our predictions actually came close to. And it's something that you can reforecast quite frequently. It only takes a couple of minutes and you can see the trend of a project through its life. So as a brief summary of how this approach works, we take the actual data from your team. So looking over the last few months, we see how it's been completing work, the changes in scope, and we create a model. This model looks at how long each card, for example, took in each column on the board, the number of bugs, blockers, and so on. Once we've created the model, which takes a matter of seconds, we can then take the rest of your backlog, the remainder of work that your project team is going to be doing, and run it through that model 1,000 times. Every time we run it, we vary, we randomize it a little bit, and we can show that we get different end dates for that project each time we run it. We end up with a distribution that looks something like this, a normal distribution of the end dates. And then it's a relatively simple process to use that to forecast throughput and also the scope of the project. And then we can see where the throughput rate crosses the scope, the likely end dates. So this is the optimistic throughput rate, higher rate, and these are the dates. And then if we look at the slightly more pessimistic or slower throughput rate, we can see that the dates shift a little bit. So very easy to interpret the output from the model. This is something that your stakeholders would understand pretty quickly. And as I mentioned before, the main value of this approach is that we can validate the model based on your own data, which is something we did with a client of ours. They have a team of about 20 people. This was not by any means a gold star team. The data is not particularly good. It's very typical of the teams we come across. But nonetheless, if we took the data from the end of April and ran it through our model, we were predicting a range of dates where this project would finish. So you can see that to be able to predict even remotely accurately at this point was quite an achievement. But we ran it again in May, June, July, and so on, each time narrowing the range of completion dates right up until a month or two before. So I think what you can probably see from this is that the model was more accurate than a project manager would have been back in May or June, for example, at predicting when this project was going to finish. This isn't untypical. We often see projects with the scope line looking like this, and so being able to predict in this situation is quite an achievement. The other way that we use the Monte Carlo model to predict in a way that's useful for the business is to look at the backlog. And we're basically saying, if you're the business, you have a challenge to know how far down this backlog we're going to get, for example, in the next 8 weeks, if we have a specific deadline or specific budget. We run the model in a similar way 1,000 times, and that gives us a probable distance down the backlog that our team is going to be able to get in the next 8 weeks. We can also see what's possible. So if everything went particularly well, then we may even get this far down the backlog. The insight that this approach generates is quite powerful because it draws the attention of the product owner and the business to these marginal user stories, the requirements that are on the edge of possible. What can we hope to achieve? And it also means that we can begin to focus on the options, the possibilities we have to get these stories above the probable line as well, whether it's some reprioritizing or some resizing or changes of functionality in order to get these ones in there. So you can see in both cases the Monte Carlo generates actionable insight. So if you want to look at a little bit more on this, there's a pretty good and detailed description of the Monte Carlo method in Wikipedia. Troy McGuinness did a lot of the early work on probabilistic forecasting in the agile space, and his YouTube video is definitely worth a look, as is his website. And if you'd like any more information on this, then please don't hesitate to contact me on this email address. Thank you for your time.